Big Brown, the Watcher Brown.
What's going on, bro? What's going on?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Got a good week of experience underneath my belt.
Very nice,
Feeling
very nice.
feeling better for it. Feeling wiser, hopefully.
Yeah. That's definitely the inspiration for my name today. Having
Yeah. Go on.
having gone through my own experiences this week,
Yeah.
I'm gonna link it back to Eckhart Tolle. I drop this guy's name every week in the
Mm,
podcast, and if you haven't
yeah.
heard of him, go and look him up because he's a legend, right? So the experiences this week led me to one of his teachings in the Power of Now, right? So the Power of
Mm,
Now, he talks about being the watcher of your own mind. Now,
mm,
thoughts wise, like when I first heard it, I was like, I don't know what that means. It went straight over my head. But basically, the way I applied that to something that happened to me this week, and I reacted in a way that was quite quick and that was quite kind of. I drew my pistol because I was like, "Oh, you're drawing your pistol. I'm drawing my pistol." That's kind of the way I reacted. Where what I should have done was I should have looked at the way my mind reacted. I should have
mm,
watched my own mind. I should have watched my own thoughts. And this is the concept that he talks about is like become the watcher of your mind, and how it's similar to even psycho-cybernetics. And it talks about like the mind being a tool that we can use. And
mm,
it's not like we are not the mind, right? We are not they're not the same thing. Like we are who we are, but the mind is something that we have control over. So
mm,
he frames it as you become the watcher of your mind, you become the watcher of your thoughts. And in the situation I had, I kind of arose to the situation because I thought that's what it required of me. However, if I look back on it now and the perspectives that have been kind of shared with me by other people whose opinion I super trust, it was like, oh, okay, this is where I should have gone. This is where I kind of should have gone with that. And
mm,
I feel like I would have been in much better stead to just watch my own emotions in
mm,
relation to what was going on.
mm,
So, for everyone out there listening, like this is I'm not going to go into the actual what happened because it's not really important. It's just that what how do you react when something happens in front of you? Pay attention to yourself and your own emotion first, as opposed to what the world around you is kind of how that's displaying. I think it's much more important to know yourself in those moments, and that's a lesson that definitely took away from this week. So that's inspired the name The Watcher Brown. There you go.
Pow pow.
Pow.
That's legit, man.
What do you think of that, man?
Oh man, I think that's super legit. I think being able to observe yourself is is a hell of a skill to be able to acquire. It's kind of like, you're removing yourself to observe yourself. So it's kind of like, okay, this is me, here I am, and then just being able to like pull away on some level and be like, okay, what am I seeing happening in this
Mm,
body of mine, in this entity of mine? I think that's a super powerful practice. It's something that I practice a lot. I don't think I would be able to evolve if I didn't do that, because otherwise you're just caught up in your own shit too much, and you don't you don't take on what other people can see about you, and it's a way of you removing yourself so that you can get a better idea of who you are, and how you are in certain situations, and whether you like what you do, whether you don't like what you do, whether you think you could have done something differently. It's a form of reflection as well as a way of being.
mm,
And it's a super powerful practice for me personally, for sure. And the watcher, the observer is is someone who just helps you be better, basically. And there's like myriad different ways I've applied that practice. And what's also cool about it is, I don't know how you felt when you started doing that, but you kind of you you see the emotion for what it is as opposed to just feeling it, and
mhm,
then you kind of remove yourself from feeling it a little bit, and you're able to be clearer, you're clearer headed, and you're able to make a better decision off the back of doing that. So you feel what you feel, and then you're able to observe that feeling, and by observing it, you kind of you're doing that from a calmer place, a cooler place, a objective place, and you're able to make a better decision having done that than if you didn't do that at all. Like, what was it like for you when you went through that?
100%. Exactly what you've just said. It's completely nailed it, bro. So it was like, I sensed the tone of anger, and I rose with anger at the same time. And then, like you just said, because I haven't taken the minute to separate myself from the emotion and observe it, and observe why I've felt what I felt and why I've even perceived what I've perceived. I kind of just dove head in, same way, and that didn't give me it didn't.
That was timing. Holy shit, man! We're getting like in sync in so many different ways now.
That was so cool. It was like a Mysterio thing as well, right? Yeah. Right. Back on track, people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like because I didn't give myself the time to think. It was a cascade of events that it didn't go anywhere super serious, but it went somewhere where in the moment when it happened, I didn't take the first instance to pause, collect, and move forward. I actually just kind of jumped in the melee as though I felt like I just jumped in the melee. And then from there, you're, like you say all the time, you're reacting, right? You're reacting to everything kind of happening next, and you've kind of, because you've started to fall, it's like everything is like kind of a snap, knee-jerk reaction, and you're not thinking your way through it. And it's just because of that first instance where all it required was you to stop, slow, think, calculate the next approach. You just feel like you're in a rigmarole, and then it's like that first initial decision affects the next 10, and then it maybe even affects the next day, affects your mood a little bit, and you just think, didn't need to go down that way. Didn't need to go down that way. You needed to see it for what it was, like you're saying, see the emotion for what it is, see kind of analyze why you felt what you felt, and then from there it's a case of acting, but you will always act from a calmer place, having gone through that process. Like kind of, it's not easy for me to sit here and hard and fast rule, okay, once you've assessed it, once you've seen it, then do this. It's like, that doesn't exist. But you can always make the decision on the back of being more collected and more regulated after kind of looking at the situation as a whole, looking at what's been said. Then it gives you time to analyze it and say, like, okay, well, was it meant like this? Was it meant like that? Can I have a more appropriate response, or is this the most appropriate response? And it just gives you a chance to preempt the eventualities after the event, rather than just jumping in head first and then just not really knowing what can happen as a result. So yeah, that was a life lesson I learned this week, and valuable one, really valuable one, because it's like you said, you can apply it. You said you had applied it in so many different ways, and I think we can relate it back to jiu-jitsu. Like, kind of sometimes you just feel a bit lost, wood for the trees. You just kind of you're just like swinging for the fences, and you don't really know why you're doing what you're doing, but you're just reacting constantly. And whereas if you stop and you think about the hand placement, and put my hand here, then that kind of affects the next move and the next move and the next move, and you can almost preempt what's going to happen next. Versus if you're just erratic and all over the place, there's no system behind how you're kind of going through things, and it leads you to kind of just more destruction down the way, rather than actually thinking with clarity, thinking with thought, and having more poise behind the whole experience.
Yeah, completely. That's what it does for you. I think if I give the example, I think of how it was applicable. I think it just helps make a lot more sense as well. Like, because it's quite an abstract thing, right? It's just like, pull yourself out of the situation, watch what your mind is doing. Is okay, but how do you actually do that? So one of the experiences I had a few weeks ago, we talked about it on the podcast, which was I had I felt disappointment. I was like, on my day, like, okay, I've set up what my ideal day is like, and I let that slip. I didn't use my day the way I would have liked to, and then by the time the end of the day come around, I was like, what is this feeling? I'm noticing something, and I realized I was disappointed. I was disappointed in myself for letting the day slip, and it didn't feel good. And what's really easy to do is slip into that feeling more and more and more. And then because there's a lot of people that I know, and there's a lot of people out there, and I'm one of them as well, where I can just get overly critical of myself as well, and just be like, oh, you're a piece of shit. That was just a stupid thing to do. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Just beat yourself up about it and get caught up in that cycle. And then what that does is, for me, the next day, that would just mean that day's shit as well. And not because I deliberately want it to be shit, but it's because I'm just festering in that emotion, and then having let the kind of self-flagellation just get out of hand, and then I don't recover, and it just takes longer and longer and longer. So what ended up happening instead was I recognized this feeling, and I had this kind of moment. I just went, okay, if I don't use my day the way I want to, in the way I've set it up, so that I feel like I'm better off at the end of the day than I am at the beginning of the day, and that means it feeds into a good day for the following day. If I don't do that, I'm going to feel disappointed. And I just observed that. I was like, I'm feeling it, but I can also see it happening. And that was really powerful, because it just went, okay, you know what? Accept that feeling. You're aware of it. Now go do something with it. Go do something about it, which is, I've observed it. And from that place of observation, I was able to say, tomorrow is going to be a better day because I felt this. And I know that I don't want to feel like this again. So I'm going to make it so that this day doesn't happen. And I'm going to make sure it's a lot further and fewer between if I'm going to have this kind of day. And that's what it did for me. And the next day I just reset. It was such a powerful feeling, in that I felt so much more in control, and of my own being, my own way of approaching life, of responding rather than reacting, and feeling. And it puts me in a proactive state as well, because I was able to reflect and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And that felt good. So, like, I sat with the feeling, I accepted it, I observed it, and from that place of observation, I was able to make sure that I moved on, and from that relatively quickly, compared to what I would have done in the past, which has been like, just treat myself like shit, basically. And that's never a good place to be coming from, because long term is like, you keep whipping yourself like that, you just don't get places. It's a lot harder for you to G yourself up about life if that's the place that you're coming from, rather than a place of that observation and that self-compassion to be able to move forward.
That's so powerful, man. That's so powerful. I can apply that in so many different ways. And the way the example you give, I think, is perfectly fits perfectly. And the way you're able to be in the moment and then be like, this action is going to have this effect. So, do I want to keep having this action? Probably not. Probably not. Yeah. And just that pause, that momentary, like 3 seconds, 4 seconds it takes you to have that thought, to then solve that initial kind of puzzle with the right answer, and then it affects the next decision, and then you're off to a much better start. And it's almost like the rest of the conversation may continue to provide that kind of trigger, almost, where every other thing that arises might require you to just to pause for a second, look at the situation. And you have those days, right? You have those days that are really testing days, and you feel like shit when you just roll with it. When you just roll with it, you don't stop and question, you don't stop and kind of reflect in the moment, and they just spiral away from you, and you feel like the day is constantly, like you said, you're reacting to everything, it's getting away from you, and you don't have any kind of foothold or purchase. But the days where you stop and you're in the moment, you collect your thoughts, and then as you kind of go through, you just have much more awareness and control, and you can act accordingly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
so go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, like, actually, just having reeled off that story, I just realized actually how it was happening this morning as well. In that I was making videos for my online portal, and it's going to be like, this one's going to be like a 2-minute video, and it's about like enjoying the process as well. We talk about, it's about the process, and you just want to enjoy it as well as much as you can. I mean, that doesn't mean like it's not gonna be shit. It's not ever gonna be shit. It's like, yeah, it is, but then it's about internalizing the reward from having gone through something that's shit to actually come out better on the other side. So it got to a stage today where I just need to make a 2-minute video, but I did it for about 35 minutes. And because I kept resetting what I was going to say. So I was like, I'm saying something. Oh, you know, I messed up a few words here. Cool. All right, do it again. Messed up a few words. Do it again. Messed up a few words. Then that excitement that builds from like messing it up and then gradually having the whole package come together where the words that I'm saying is making sense. And then I felt like the pressure. I'm 80% of the way through. Oh no, if I cock it up, I don't want to start all over again. And then I started feeling that pressure, and then I was like cocking it up, and then I was like, damn shit. I was gonna like it could be the whole thing of like start beating myself up again, but instead I recognized it. I just started cracking up, and it was just funny to me. So instead of it being something where I was like, failing at perfection, I was like, this is just part of the process, because what I'm doing is getting clearer with my message. I'm getting clearer with the words that I'm trying to use. I'm getting more articulate. I'm using this as a learning process as opposed to it being something that I'm getting upset about. And again, that's because of the practice of observing yourself in that kind of meta way is helpful. Otherwise, again, just getting caught up too much in it. And then I would be like, you know what, fuck this. I ain't getting this right. I'm going to save it for later. And it's like, instead of that, and then if I'm saving it for later, I'm going to go through the whole thing of, oh, do I really want to do this? I kept screwing it up before. And then, that's the knock-on effect of that. It's the stuff that you don't realize that is going to come from that if you don't do these kinds of practices. And then so instead of it being like, this is supposed to be 2 minutes, it's taking me over 30 minutes. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? It was like, yeah, okay, that's annoying. But then I started seeing the funny side, and I started seeing the side of it, which was beneficial to me, which was I'm getting better at articulating, and I'm going to get, as a result of screwing up so many times, I'm going to get better at editing videos. Yeah. all the positive things that could come from this. And then, yeah, I did it. I got it out before we started recording the podcast. And it's like, okay, great. That's fantastic. That's one thing that if I go to bed tonight and I do nothing else, at least I've done that. And I feel good because I'm going to be better off tomorrow than I am when I woke up today. And if I didn't do that, I'll just be frustrated. And tomorrow would be like, okay, I've got this thing to do as well as all the other things that I want to do and got to do. So yeah, super necessary, bro.
Yeah, buddy. I love that, man. That was really well broken down, man. Really well broken down, because I was genuinely following that the whole way through, and yeah, it makes so much sense to see the positives in that, and because it's so easy to fall to the negatives, right? It's so easy to just kind of just beat yourself up, and but nothing is going to come of that. As soon as you start seeing it for what it really is, and kind of applauding yourself for making the effort in the first place. You're like, oh, I've got that rep in now. I've got that rep in. I've got that rep in. And I kind of, then you start building ahead of steam, and it's like, oh, okay, I've done this. And you're not looking at it as like, I'm getting close to the edge of the cliff. It's like, I'm getting close to the edge of the cliff so I can now fly, rather than I can, I'm going to fall off the end. I mean, that's
a sick one. I love that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's a really, really great way of, well, personally, I hope people out there can resonate with it the same. I know that I'm gonna listen back to that part of the podcast for sure. That was fire, man. Really, really good.
Respect. That's good, man. Whatever way it can make that impact is always helpful. That's what this is about. Is like talking about the experiences, knowing like the frameworks that we have in place to help us move forward, using our experiences with coaching and with our trading and stuff, and just applying it to ourselves as much as we apply it to everybody else, right?
Definitely. Yeah, really powerful. Only through those ones that you don't quite make it, they're your teachers, right? They're your teachers, because the ones that you tick off, you can use those as momentum, but then the way you kind of stumble and fall, it's like, okay, cool. That's the thing I need to work on. So it's now the next obstacle has kind of presented itself, and you have a heading. So yeah, it's 100%. It's just reframing, right? It's reframing the situation we talk about all the time.
Completely. Yep. You gotta reframe it into, what am I getting from this? What am I learning from this? Because if the frame is always the negative side, it's this is always a key distinction to make, which is that it doesn't mean that you're never going to have anything negative happen. It doesn't mean that you're never going to have any setbacks. And all it is about, and it doesn't mean that you turn a blind eye to that either. It's like, okay, shit happens. You're going to feel shit for it, or it's going to affect you in a negative kind of way, but it's accepting that and then turning it into, what can I make this mean? So ask yourself that question. It's like, okay, how many different ways can I make this mean something which is going to drive me and propel me forward rather than hold me back? You know, it's like, what is it? Rocky 6. Ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. And that's what happens there as well, because you've got to learn from it and keep moving forward.
Love it, man. Love it. It's like life's telling you which way it wants you to go, and you've just got to see that that's the way you need to kind of etch in and learn from. And yeah, man, it's like the whole journey of it all. It's not meant to stop with this. It's just meant to start with this. I mean, it's meant to just start with this, and let's just that's made me feel a whole load more kind of well-rounded about my incident that happened this week. And it's now, it's like, and even in the moment, it was just like, oh, this is an impasse. I don't know kind of how I want to react to this, but I know I need to react to it. I know I need to react to this in a better way than I did react to this. And yeah, that's a great help for sure.
Yeah, amazing, man. Yeah, you go through that shit. You fuck shit up so you can come out better on the other side.
Too right, man. Too right. But back to Eckhart Tolle. He's like, one of his lines I absolutely love, which is like, the goal is to die and realize there is no death. And like in that you've failed, or you're perceived you've come to a place where maybe you haven't reacted the right way, and it's just to teach you that you can now be born in a new way. Teach you that you can now like see that kind of stumbling block, and eventually learn to clear it. And that clearing of that, kind of thinking of the new process and thinking of the new way of being, is that a new rebirth. Like, there's that new kind of being born again. So yeah, really, really interesting, man. Really, it's a method. It's literally what you've just kind of given there is like a method for dealing with a lot of shit.
Yeah,
a lot of shit. Yeah,
big time, man. Was that one of those moments for you as well, where it felt like, oh, this is a rebirth. Nothing's going to be the same again after this moment?
Honestly, now I feel that. I feel that right here in this podcast. I feel that right now, because it's been a process. It's been a process last 3-4 days. Yeah, last 3-4 days where it's been like, no, 3-4 days. I think it's like 3 days. And on the back of it, you're just like, anger, annoyance. And you just you just think straight away, okay, push to one side. Like, don't be in it. Kind of like, I think that's my way of kind of trying to process it and trying to objectively look at it from the outside, is to just put it to one side, keep on going with my life, rather than keeping it in my head and kind of being in traffic and be like, oh, fucking hell, I'm annoyed, I'm angry, or whatever. That's not the way I can't ever look at myself objectively. And then you kind of go through it and you talk to one person about it, talk to the next person about it, and you end up getting a bit of more of a frame on the situation and realizing that there is growth in this. And I think once you start realizing, oh, there's a light at the end of this tunnel, it's not just kind of a black hole, and I'm not kind of just falling into nothingness. You start to kind of build a picture around it. And what you've said today has definitely, because I've almost come here with a wantingness of like, help me fix this. You know what I mean? Help me kind of like get around this. And you just kind of plugged it in a way that's been super succinct, super kind of to the point. And it's just let me see where the growth is in this situation. And it's exciting, man. Yeah, like right now, like you just asked that question, like rebirth. Yeah, 100%. Right now, I'm just like, good. I'm glad that happened, because I wasn't as prepared pre that. Clearly, I wasn't as prepared pre that, but it had to happen to make me feel what I feel right now. So I'm happy about it. I'm not happy about this annoying thing having happened to me. You know what I mean? So yeah, man. Thank you for that, G.
Amazing, man. This is why I love having these conversations. We're just figuring shit out as we go along. I mean, people just have conversations, man. Have good conversations with people, because honestly, that's one of the silver linings that has come out of this pandemic playbook. Basically, is I think there's a lot of silver linings, and and one of them has been like good conversations with people, because it's been a scenario where, you know, everybody's going through some shit, and it's just a time for exploration in that sense, I think. And I think it's a time for figuring out your own shit, I definitely think. And so yeah, I've been doing that. I've been delving into that deeply, like 100%, like diving in head first and just doing that. And then luckily I'm surrounded by people like my flatmates, like you, my bro, just people who I can have a conversation with, where we can just talk about stuff which isn't just surface stuff, you know. It just goes deeper, because then you just learn something. And like you said, there's a little bit of a rebirth there each time, and the ability to formulate a thought and articulate it as you go along. It's such a, I love that feeling. It's such a good feeling to be able to do that, because you're just like, oh wow, I'm exploring uncharted territory here. You know, there's something sitting in my brain, but I've never really figured that out. Like me and my flatmate Matt were having a conversation about morality a couple of days ago, and then he just asked me a question, and I was like, I've never thought about this before. Like, I have no idea how it affects my morality, and like, or what what the morality is as a human being. And yeah, so it was super fascinating. So I was just sitting there, like, just looking up at the sky, kind of like, yeah, what do I think about this? You know, I don't even know. It was an amazing feeling, and yeah, and it was super cool. It was super cool. So yeah, exactly. I just recommend, like, just get into good conversations, man. You figure out a lot about your own shit, and you just enrich your experience, because at the end of the day, the way we communicate is like, if we need to figure out our own shit, like writing and conversing is what we got to do.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Now you've said it, I can almost say that for the last couple of weeks, I've been quite busy, and obviously the name of the podcast last week was like Spread Thin Brown, which is cool, which is not like it's not a problem. But I felt this urge to talk to somebody. Sometimes I'll pick the phone up and I've rang you. I've rang like I've spoken to my mum, right? I've rang mates of mine who are, one of them's in India, one of them's in the northeast of England. TJ, I've spoke to one of my clients, Ash, my client Maria, like people that kind of have perspective on things. And you're almost going to somebody like a healer. You're almost going to like a somebody who can just provide perspective and provide a bit of wholesome conversation, like you're talking about. I just think it gives you so much more fuel to go about your life with, and it's like positive energy, and just good vibes. Like, you know, there's so, I think we are such like a sensory being. We need to feel that, like, that somebody has our back and somebody has like the best interest. And everyone. Sometimes you spend a lot of time with people who are like fleeting in your life, whether they're like a builder, whether they're this, whether they're that. Where just kind of they're there, but they're not really there for any kind of long-standing purpose. But then you spend time with people who 100% have your best interests at heart. And I think at times when life's busy or when life's kind of stressful, you almost need to reconnect with that. You need to feel that positive energy, positive vibe, because then you fill yourself with that, and you go and give that to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like that Muhammad Ali quote where he's like talking about taking a pinch of kindness and a quart of gratitude and all this and all that, and he's like making it into a cake and serving it to each and every deserving person he meets. I love that. It fills me with so much joy when I hear that, and it's totally legit, because that's what we want to do at the end of the day. You know, I mean, we don't want to operate from a place of anger or a place of just destructiveness, but you do want to operate from a place of understanding and a place of calm. And sometimes you need to reconnect with those kind of people, because they can fill you with that. Where your life might be busy, your life might kind of be a bit scattered. Sometimes you talk to somebody who has that just calm, kind of like, oh wow, that was nice, thank you for that. Like, that's exactly what you just given. That's exactly what you just given me. You know what I mean? So brilliant. Yeah,
amazing, man. It's like, I get the pump when I'm speaking to you. I'm just like, I am fucking jacked. I'm ready to take up. Just throw it. I'll fight a bear right now. I'll do it. It's like, that's the Umar effect. That's what it is.
I love it, man. I love it. That's it. That's what I want. Just jack everybody up. Like, go crazy, everybody. Go crazy. Go live your lives.
Yeah, exactly, man. Because it's like, I mean, yeah, because on that as well is like, if you are in that negative state, or if you are in that, you know, you're talking about the situation that brought out some anger, right? And so if you stay with that, it's like, it's difficult, obviously, to see the effect you're having on other people around you, because it's such an insular thing when you're caught in your own, in your own emotion. And it's a protective thing as well. You sit with it, and you don't want to kind of let anybody else in sometimes as well. And you close off your world when you do that. And then, but if you can just give yourself, like, the wherewithal to just ask yourself, is like, all right, even if I like this, even if on some level I'm getting something out of being in this situation, because there is a reward mechanism that's kicked off in the brain by feeling a certain emotion, even if it is a negative emotion. It's like, what's the effect that's going to have on the people around me, on the work that I'm doing? What are the things that I want to be productive in, and how is it actually serving that? And then you could even go way further down the line and think, okay, but if I keep being like this, what's my legacy? It's like, what do I leave behind? How do I affect the people around me? And you can look at it in lots of different ways, whether it's right now, whether it's in a slightly bigger sphere around you, whether it's still only to do with you, but it's, the work that you do, the things that you like to engage in. And you can ask yourself, how does this impact that? Does it make it better or worse? The people around you, and then look 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years down the line and be like, how's it affecting that as well? Because in the here and now, is like, we're right here. But if we choose one path, we can go here. If we choose the other path, we'll go here. And the divergence can be mental over a long enough period of time. So you just want to be able to know that you can course correct along the way, so that you don't end up taking that path where you realize that in 50 years time, I don't want to end up there.
I love that, man. I love that. Completely agree with it. Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I was just saying to her that I was thinking on this, like the way you've just explained it is the way I had been thinking on that previously was like, imagine you're born into the world, and the first thing you do is you turn left, and you turn left, and you continue turning left, and before you know it, you have a life of constantly just turning left. You never learn how to turn right, and that's just like, it's just a microcosm. It's just kind of a way of encapsulating somebody who doesn't ever know how to think outside of what they only know. And it's like, that's the way I'm born into a family, or born into a system, maybe like a hierarchical system or whatever it is. It doesn't need to be anything specific, but it's like, we do this. We only have one way of kind of living, and because of that, we don't ever develop the full autonomy of life to be like, oh, in this situation, I can pause for a second, think about it. I can extrapolate it out, like you're talking about, into 50 years time. Like, I'll have a family one day. Do I want them to read? Do I want them to see the way in which I've just reacted? Do I want them to have that be their lesson, or do I want them to have a full rounded spectrum and be able to, in all situations, just pause? And if it does require that, cool, you have that in your arsenal. But if it also requires you to just think and be cool and calm-headed, I can also provide that as well. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that. There's so much more attached to that one decision. It's like the gladiator quote, right? I'm gonna get you jacked here, G. Are you ready?
Oh,
so it's like,
it's coming, bro. I can feel it already. It's bubbling.
the fire. Yeah. It's like the decisions we make in life echo in eternity, right? So you've let that sit for a second. Let that sit for a second.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Strength and honor, baby. Strength and honor.
Fucking love it, man. Virtues.
Yeah.
It's just you don't want to block off from these other things. You want to see how this little microcosm can extrapolate out, and then at the same time, you've got like Eckhart Tolle talking about, like, all we have is right now. So right now, do you want, say the world was to end now, like, would you want that to be the last kind of way you were kind of imprinted on the world? Probably not. Probably not. You would want there to be some sort of semblance of thought of calm-headedness and just kind of a more sensible approach. Now that would be the last tattoo you'd want to leave on this world, rather than one of just like recklessness and abandon. Like, yeah, there's a lot to that, man, for sure.
Yeah, big time. I think when you said, like, it was a while ago, it was I think you said it was a Shakespeare quote. The every third thought should be about your mortality.
About your yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And that made me sometimes I think about that. I've realized that crosses my mind when I go on a run, because going for a run is one of those where I just kind of like just realign a little bit, and like, you know, I've got some good music playing, that gets me in a good headspace, and just sometimes, yeah, just one of those things that cross my mind. And it's like it just feels like you know, because we're this generation now as well, and especially the generation below us, that they got basically a 50% chance of living to at least 100, and which is mad, is crazy. You know, he's like, but it's also, so it's like you know, to think of your mortality at my age at 34 almost seems like, you know, it's forever away, but it helps for sure. It's and that's the thing, it's not, right? Because when I think of that, it's like, then I start thinking about watching The Matrix in the cinema and being 13 and realizing that The Matrix is 21 years old now, and that just blows my mind. And you're just like, holy shit, there's been 21 years that have just gone by. I don't know what the hell, like, everything's just like, you know, in the scope of like looking at it as 21 years, like that's just a massive blur. But so it's like, well, the next 21 years is, you know, it's just, yeah, exactly. It's going to be click of the fingers. It's going to go by. So having thought about, having you had said that was really effective for me, because I don't really think about mortality. Like, I don't really notice myself thinking about it too much. And that's been helpful, because it's, yeah, just getting okay with the idea that someday you're going to die, basically, is going to happen. And yeah, there's lots of, for me, there's lots of unexplored, uncharted territory there in terms of what I feel and what I think around death, and then how that makes me behave in life. But it certainly was a good kickstart. It was certainly a good starting point when you brought that up. And yeah, I think that's some helpful stuff, because when you start thinking about things like that as well, it definitely makes you go, well, I could be nihilistic and be like, well, I'm going to die one day, and what's the point? And then you just live like 80 years of nothingness in a way, really. But then, you know, that, to me, that just doesn't hold true, because otherwise you wouldn't make it to 80 years. You'd just be like, you know, if you follow through with nihilism that nothing matters, then you would just kill yourself. But you don't. So it matters on some level. And then you might as well just choose to see that everything that you do matters, on whether it's to you, whether it's to other people, or whatever. And that way you just live a more fulfilling life. You know, you just feel a lot better. And there is the idea that you could, I mean, I remember you mentioned it in passing once as well, which was that can feel like it's quite a weight on you as well. If everything matters and everything I do matters, and that can feel quite weighty. But I don't know, maybe I found a way of like detaching from that in a sense, because it's just like, I don't know, you just, what's the other option? I don't want the other option, so this is just the way it's going to be for me.
I like that a lot. Because there is no highway option, right? It's like, this is my way. This is the only way, right? Kind of, I want to be on this path. Yeah, and if you choose it wholeheartedly, then it's like, I kind of liken that to my mum. So my mum is so deeply engrossed in her religion, and it's like freeing in a way. It's almost like her routine gives her absolute structure and absolute purpose, and whatever comes with that is par for the course. It's like, this is my way. I'm not going to stray. Like, this is it. Like, and she doesn't feel weight. There is no weight to it. There is no, like you just said, because like we have so many infinity of options in front of us. Sometimes it sometimes can seem like, oh, this grass is green on this side and grass is green. It's like, no, there is just my grass. Like, how good I want my grass to be. Like, that's it. Yeah, it's a really interesting thought, and I think that's another thing to think on for sure in the moment, and kind of just in and about your life. Like, are you thinking enough about watering your own grass here and now, and or are you worrying about kind of the minutiae of the details? Like, some of the stuff just doesn't really, it doesn't really matter. You just need to be about yourself right here, right now. Yeah, it's really interesting, man. Really interesting.
Yeah, and then when you're doing that kind of thing as well, if you're just focusing on the minutiae in the detail, then that's kind of like an avoidance strategy. I made the post this week where your quote from the previous podcast, which is, "I may not make the right decision, but I'll make the decision right." And it's like, it's about starting, because, and you said it as well, which is like getting all your ducks in a row. If that's what you're trying to do before you start on the thing that is important for you, you're just never going to start. You're just never going to get going, because first of all, you don't know all the possible outcomes from the decision that you're going to make. So how is it going to be possible for you to potentially get all your ducks in a row? That doesn't mean that you don't prepare, but it also means that you just have to take action. And and so I just kind of forgot like what really triggered that, but it was just the idea that you're never gonna have all your ducks in a row. So you just gotta go with it. Yeah, it just kind of triggered something. Now I just kind of like lost my trail of thought. It's like, why did it actually trigger that? But
I had that with the previous thought. I had that with the previous thought. Like, I went somewhere with it, and I was like, I don't know, I've lost it midway through, but yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever, man. Yeah, but I wanted to ask you about the Kevin Hart video that you posted on your Insta, because he was on the Joe Rogan podcast like a month or two ago, and you said like it was some powerful stuff, that you agree with everything that he's saying, because he was talking about his car accident where he fractured his back, and the things he had to say about that. And you said you'd heard similar words being said to you. He was basically told that if he hadn't done the prerequisite training and been in shape, that his spine, it was basically literally, he makes this signal is like, just like an inch, not even an inch from him not being able to walk again. So, and you really resonate with that, and you said you'd heard similar words as well because of the car accident you've been in, like 2012, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's such a long time ago now, but yeah. So first off, I'll just say, like, people out there wanting to listen to a wicked podcast with somebody who, he's a comedian, but like the most I've ever resonated with him was not when he's not even telling a joke. He's just talking about life. Like, kind of, that's the most I've felt kind of tied to somebody's opinions. And it's the Joe Rogan Experience, where he's talking about his life at the second episode. And he's just talking about his car accident, and how his years spent with his trainer pre the accident. I think he's been with his trainer for 4 years, and his trainer is one of those people who is about the everyday kind of lifestyle. And we talk about this all the time, like kind of doing some kind of, whether it be 15 minutes of movement, that kind of that Bilal, kind of my cousin Bilal, he's always on about, like, kind of just having some kind of movement through your day is super important. His trainer subscribes to the same model. I think I've been the same for a little while now, is that something should be done every single day. Anyway, that little bit of movement, as well as the dedicated workouts, as well as the programming, as well as the kind of like building him up through the years through separate movements, and then just making it more and more advanced, led him to a place where when he went through his car accident, it was, and the way he holds the finger up is like literally like that tiny ass space there, like a fraction of a millimeter, and that's all it was between him being wheelchair bound the rest of his life. Like, half of his body just shut off, like not being able to control his bladder, probably not being able to control like any kind of sensory input to the lower part of his body, maybe his lower back. Like, you don't know with this stuff, you don't know how high it affects, or what it affects, whether it affects neural function, like kind of in the brain. You just don't know. And whether you have to be on life support, there's like an infinity of events that could have happened. But because this is what his post is about, is because he had preempted it to the level that he had in training himself and being physically able and physically fit, and taking that shit seriously, and not for any reason. He didn't know he's not gearing up to be like 5 years from now I'll be a car crash and I've got to be in great shape and I've got to really like bulletproof myself. No, he just knew that it's in preparation for life. You know, it's in preparation for life. Like shit's going to come at you and you don't know what's going to happen. But if you're preparing yourself in the same ways that we're talking about with the earlier conversation, with like, I've got a method that I can run through when I'm feeling slightly stressed or I'm feeling slightly heated in a conversation. I can pause and I can slow down. That's going to allow me to really go through that conversation and come out the other side in a good way. It's the same thing. It's the same thing for training, whereby life can throw shit at you. And this is where it links back to me, is that me and my dad were in a really bad car crash. Like, I can't actually quite remember the year now, but I think I was about 21. So it's about 7 years ago, 22, 21. And we were told after that car crash that if you guys hadn't have been training the way you'd been training, or you weren't kind of as like hefty and like kind of large, the effect of the speed of the crash would have been way worse on you. And it was the fact that like the impact was such a horrible impact, and like it made the papers like the headline was like "Two hurt in horror crash." Like it was a bad accident. It was a fucking bad accident. But that's the thing, is that it should have been way worse. It should have been way worse. I mean, my dad, I don't know if he walked out of it, but he wasn't hurt. Like, thank God. Like, he wasn't. I think he the worst injury my dad had was that, this is going to sound horrible, but his eyelid got cut down the middle, and there was a piece of glass that would have gone straight through his eye, but it didn't. And for whatever reason, the way he kind of tells the story is that like something kind of told him just to be like, close your eyes and stay closed, that kind of thing. And I think he even tells it like he didn't just close his eyes, but he kind of clenched his eyes closed. And I think the I don't know whether it was forehead or his eyebrow or something, just kind of obviously as it collapses down across your eye, it just shielded it, and then the piece of glass cut through his eyelid, but didn't actually enter his eye. I think it actually did by a few millimeters, because I remember him having to have stitches in his eye or around the eye. But the long and the short of it was that because we had put ourselves through it in a physical setting beforehand, the force of the impact, the speed of the crash, all that stuff wasn't as bad as it could have been. And that's what Kevin's talking about in his podcast as well, is that like people kind of dying left, right, and center from very preventable diseases, illnesses. Talk about diabetes, getting limbs amputated, all of these things that are just like massively preventable. You know, I mean, you don't need to live your life as a slave. You can live your life like kind of free of these things if you kind of look after your own kind of being, you know what I mean? And invest your time in health and fitness and well-being. And when I listened to that bit in the podcast, I just had to post it. I actually listened to it about nearly a month ago now, almost when it first came out. And it's taken me ages to kind of get it out there, but I'm so glad I did, because even some of the feedback I've had from it, people commenting, one of the girls I know on there, Charlotte, she's I don't know her injury, but she commented saying that, look, this is totally legit, and it gives me hope that I can recover from my injury as well, because she's been through it, and she's probably had, I think, I'm not sure, but she's probably had an injury on after having gone through yoga for many years, Pilates for many years, and this stuff, it just safeguards you. You know, it totally safeguards you. And I can say it 100%. Like, you just feel way more durable. Like, how invincible do you feel when you go after a few rounds with Sylvie? Like, you just like
I feel like I'm about to die.
I'm talking about what's that adaptation curve? You've gone through that dip into Hades' asshole, and you dip out of it, and you come out. And it's like, oh shit, I'm alive. You're not actually dead. You're not visiting the pearly gates, but you come out on the other side, and you just oh, and then you just feel like you're made of wood, like you're made of Sylvie wood. Like that's what he gives you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's so needed.
That could be a good name for his gym when he starts it up. Sylvia Steel.
Yeah,
the SS.
Too right, I love it. Yeah, good shout, man. That'd be wicked. But yeah, it's if people out there listen to the podcast and have never actually delved into this, it's not what you think. And I think this can sound a little bit kind of like, I don't know what the word is, but it can probably sound a bit rich coming from somebody who's kind of seemingly been at it all my life and training and whatever. But no, it's like kind of I'm just like yourself, like found the gym because my dad kind of told me to go that way and whatever, and you just learn your way. So if anyone's kind of having apprehensions about it, or if you know somebody who's having apprehensions about it, there's so many people, like obviously ourselves, Jude from last week, who can easily make that process doable for anybody. You know what I mean? So and then the benefits are endless.
Endless. It's just the knock-on effect to the here and now, to you, to people around you. Just what you feel like you can achieve in life is like is it just goes beyond. It's like what did Arnie say? Is like all he knew was that I need to build my body, and then stuff comes from there.
Yeah, you start with yourself. I think just like you start with yourself, right? You start with yourself, and you make yourself into that thing that. And one of my clients said it so well. I was shooting a video testimony with her. Shout out to Lee. She was talking about how when you achieve that first rep, it's just a microcosm of like achieving the next thing and achieving the next thing, and then before you know, you've done 5 reps and 6 reps, and really what you've done is you've achieved 5 times, you've achieved 10 times, and you finish the end of a workout and you've done what 20 sets or something around that. Like you've had like in those sets you've done 10 reps in each of them. Like kind of you've had hundreds of achievements, right? That's the way you think about it, and that's not only building you physically, it's building you mentally. You know what I mean? So there's like you just said, there's not just the physical benefits that obviously saved Kevin from being like paralyzed, and like saved us from having like multiple fractures and really going through horrible like rehab. Is just there's also the mental aspect, which is like I can come back from this. Like kind of I came back from being like from a weight last week, and now I can do the weight. So okay, now I can do way more. It's slow process, but you can definitely build off of it.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. That sounds brutal. Do you remember the accident as well?
Oh yeah. I remember it clear as day, man. Clear as day. Yeah. For a while, I think I whacked my head on the dashboard pretty bad, and I couldn't remember much of it. But then it starts coming back, and you start remembering. I remember all of it. I remember like the why. My dad was actually going to go and sell the car to my uncle, and along the way, it was just one of those moments where kind of this guy pulled out from in front of us at the wrong time, and we just plowed into the side of him, and it was just like it was on a anybody who lives in Stockton-on-Tees, my friends will know, the ones that listen to the podcast. It was on a kind of crossroads, and there's a KFC or a Burger King. There was a Burger King on the corner, and the Burger King was I'd say about 10 meters from where the initial impact happened, and this guy's car lifted and flew very close to going through that Burger King window. It was like one of those like movie style impacts, and you see like kind of the Thing or something like hitting a car.
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, it just flies away. It was like one of those. It was like I don't know why it was that impactful or whatever, but yeah, I remember our car like hitting that way and then just like spinning 360 the other way and just like plonking down. I remember the noise of the impact, the smell, waking up and just smelling. You know how you smell like engine grease and petrol, and like looking up and being like steam, and the wires of the dashboard were just hanging out, and me just like freaking out, being like, what's going on? Like you touch everything's wet, and it's like, what the hell? So like, is this like steam from the engine? So like carpets in the car, the seat, your clothes, and obviously you got blood everywhere. You look at your dad, and he's like fucking, he's hanging, but he's all right. He was talking to me, and the paramedics arrived, had to cut the roof off the car, like get us out of it, get into the hospital. And then I remember going into hospital, asking my uncle the same question about 10 times, just like nonchalant, are you working tomorrow? And him being like, yeah, I'm working tomorrow. Just because you just high off your face. He's giving you some drugs to calm you down. And then, like every 2 minutes looking around the hospital, and, are you working tomorrow? Just like relay the same like 50 first dates, like in your mind again. And because your body's just like a complete. It's trying to like Ctrl Alt delete. Let's get this guy back online, man. Fucking wake up, man. Yeah. But yeah, that's it, man. It was a crazy experience, man. Crazy experience.
That is madness.
Yeah, man. Shit. Yeah, wouldn't wish it on anyone, man. But you know, I think again, like we say all the time, you don't get to pick the lessons that you learn in your life, but you get to pick how you react to them. So I'm glad it could be a lesson now.
Yeah. Do you feel like your life is kind of in 2 eras of like what happened, life before it and life after it? Is it that different for you?
I think I talked about this in one of the podcasts where like it was definitely that sentinel event that made me start dropping weight, start looking at rehab, start looking at other methods of training, start expanding my horizons in terms of just what I wanted to do with my life, where I wanted to live my life. On the back of that, because in that time my dad was in the process of moving to Kenya, so it was like family was kind of splitting up a little bit. So it was like, oh, what do we do now? And then that happened, bang, and then it was like, okay, now figure this shit out as well. So it was good. It was 100% a reset that I needed, and yeah, like yeah, it was a really interesting time. Really interesting time. I think on the back of it, a lot of growth. Like obviously that never stops, but it was definitely a period where it sparked a lot of shit for sure. Yeah.
So, because I know you said before that you were like, okay, I was training a certain way and I knew that wasn't going to work for me because my body literally can't do that right now. So I had to change things up. What was it that went through your mind, like after that, to have that, to experience that growth that you did?
I think, yeah, to kind of frame that. So I was training like a madman pre-accident, and then post, it was like my body was so battered and broken. I was just like, for weeks, and you're not used to that when you're young. You're not used to kind of feeling like, why can't I get up and walk around? Or after I've walked around, why do I feel like I need to lie down and sleep for 2 days? Like that was just a full systemic just shut down. Yeah, and it was. I remember walking my dog and thinking, I'm fine. And I actually fell while I was walking him, and my cousin was with me at the time, and I was just like, why am I fucking on the floor? Like, this makes no sense. Like, what's wrong with you? Get up. Yeah, and that, yeah. So on the back of it, it was almost like, okay, I don't know if I can do what I did do, so I know I want to keep moving forward. And obviously you had the time on your hands, like similar to the time we have now, really. I was just home, laid up, and you kind of like spend your time on YouTube, and you spend your time kind of like just researching training, watching training videos, and all of a sudden you stumble across some guy doing a deep kind of goblet squat, mobilizing this, and so I kind of hurt like that. Maybe I should try that. And yeah, it just literally just goes from there. Kelly Starrett, big shout out Kelly Starrett, because he was the one that kind of just started that off, and from there you find the next guy, and you find the next guy, and you find the next guy, and yeah, I just felt like that time it would have been wasted if I just kind of come out of it and gone right back to doing what I was doing before. It's almost like what we were talking about with the kind of conversation. If you have that, or that altercation, if you have that kind of altercation and you leave it and then you just immediately enter the next one and you react the same way you just did, you're just like, oh well, I didn't need to do that. I learned. Now you framed it for me. I don't need to react that way again and again and again and again. There is other options. So until I kind of explore those other options, not until but I should explore those other options. And that kind of led me down the route of more like exercising correctly, more knowing my anatomy, and nothing but good things, man. So it just helped me align with where I actually wanted to be.
Did it ever feel like an existential crisis on any level?
No, I don't know why. I don't know if I just think it felt like almost like a weight lifted off in a way, where it's just like, oh, I get to stop and rethink, and I get to restart almost. Like sometimes you can build yourself into something, and you can kind of, there's so much that goes into this. There's so much that kind of unpack with this, but you can almost be stuck in a certain way of living, and you feel like that's your safety mechanism, whether it be going to the gym, whether it be reacting in a certain way, whether it be anger, whether it be kind of all that stuff. That is your means of operating. And then when something happens which completely gives you opportunity to wipe the slate clean, you're almost like, oh, I don't need those defense mechanisms anymore, because I'm not required to live that way anymore. Hope that kind of makes sense.
Okay.
And then you can start adopting new things. Yeah, it's because you don't put the pressure on yourself to live the way you were living, even though there was no pressure in the first place. It's just the only pressure you put on yourself is your own pressure, right? You're not, the world isn't looking at you to perform or to be that guy. It's only just the way you receive that and the way you kind of react to it. But then when that kind of thing happens, it was almost like I can't quite fight it to get back to where I was, because the bar where I was so high. So what I can do now is think laterally and think what else is available to me. And in doing that, it's a lot of freedom, because you see that the spectrum is broad this way rather than just kind of going up. It's like, oh, well, I've fallen back down to here now. Do I continue to try and go back to where I was, or do I kind of like think, oh, okay, I can start building some real estate over here? And then you realize that, oh, I can go back to where I was, but I'd like to just follow this path. And I think that's luckily where I found myself. And then you end up building, and you end up putting your attention into that. And I remember kind of going back to the, well, not going back to the gym for a little while actually, and just kind of being at home and working on kind of mobility and putting a hockey ball here and trying to feel that. Oh, this is internal rotation. Oh, I didn't know what this was like. And being like, oh, okay, let me just explore this. And there's the same passion you have for before. You can almost just redirect it and put it into this new thing. And that's it's like it's teaching you how to overcome the obstacle in front of you, and not just run back to old ways.
Yeah. So I find that really interesting, because it just sounds like you were just open to moving laterally. It wasn't even a thought to stay where you were. Whereas I can imagine that there's plenty of people, because it's going to feel like they've lost something, that they're always going to try and recover what they've lost. And and so stuck in that pattern, always feeling resentful that this accident has happened, and feeling worse as a result of that. And because you're always trying to chase where you were instead of carving new ground for yourself. So that I find like that's truly inspirational as well. I think just you're like, all right, I'm going to take a lateral shift, and I'm going to keep moving forward in that direction. And yeah, you've said a lot of good stuff there in the sense of how you can broaden your horizons and broaden your perspective as a choice, because it can be a choice, because it's just amazing that you were wired to be like, I'm not thinking about the other choice. I'm just thinking about making sure I get the most out of this.
I think it's about, you've got to be a bit real with yourself, because I knew the levels I'd set myself in the gym at that time, and it was like, okay, am I actually able to stand up and walk around? Never mind go to the gym and load a barbell to high heaven. No, I can't, right? So like, what can I do? Like, I still want to do something. I don't want to just sit here and just kind of feel useless. And I think, yeah, that's kind of it's a blessing. It's definitely a blessing, because I don't know where that came from, but it definitely came to definitely save my life in that moment, because not that I was going anywhere, but I was just wanting not to be like, you just feel a bit useless. Like you can't, like the way in which, like Mark Bell says it, it's like the way that you PR every day, or personal record, the way you reach a new personal record every day is by doing something new. And because the first time you do it, you've never done it, you've that's the best you've ever done it, because it's brand new to you, right? And I think that kind of mindset applied across the board, you just feel like you're gaining momentum. And at that stage, I was literally without momentum, because I was just still up in bed, like nothing's happening. And then when I tried to make something happen, no, you got to sit back down again, and like kind of your body isn't able to do anything. So your mind starts to be like, okay, well, let's think a bit more about kind of gaining some real estate in this area, and slowly but surely you start moving forward. And yeah, I wasn't kind of by any means finished article like, oh, I'm a new human being now. Obviously that's a culmination of the last X many years, meeting people like yourself, speaking to people, kind of having that. But it was definitely the spark that kind of lit the match, and then from there you start rolling forward.
Amazing, man. It's like
death and rebirth, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a big one. Do you ever use it still now to propel you in a way, like what happened in like, okay, what am I trying to say? Yeah, it's like if you ever find yourself in a spot where you feel like you might not be handling life as well as you could be, and you're like, do you ever go back and think, no, that happened, and just get that kind of spark again?
Yeah. I don't necessarily use that accident, but I should. I think all these things are just lessons. The most recent one that I use is fasting. Like fasting is like living within your means, living kind of like with your head down after one purpose. That focuses you for sure. And yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing you've touched on there. I think I personally should do that more. But I think just for everyone, like everyone's got their own life experiences that you look on, or even people that are very close to you. You look at like your parents' struggles. We talk about this a lot, and you just draw from it. You draw from it to focus you in the moment where you are now, and you link it back, like you said earlier, to if I'm aware enough in this moment to make the right choice, then tomorrow I'll feel better for it. So it's just removing yourself from the situation, slowing the pace down, like you said, recanting past events where these things happen to you in your life, and it's almost like you're paying good on them, like you're saying, like kind of almost like thank you for this happening, and you're using it in a way rather than it kind of just beating you. You're kind of using it as fuel to move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like you don't even, like you say you should, but you wouldn't even have to, right? It's like I'm always careful with the use of the word should. It's like I should do this or I should do that, because in places like, especially people on like our people who work with us, there's always like a should going on. It's like, no, is you do the thing that you need to do. You do the thing that the action that you need to take to move yourself forward. Don't tell yourself should, because it's just going to mean, you're going to beat yourself up. But the point I'm making there is, like, you've probably, like you said, fasting. So that's the last thing that you're using. You don't even have to go back to the accident. Say you just have another experience which you can rely on, which helps propel you forward, right? So it's like, yeah, okay, so that's interesting as well, because it doesn't have to be just that one thing. It can be other things as well. It can be other experiences that you've gone through which take you further.
It's almost like me identifying with myself from that accident. Very different human being. Like this was definitely in me, but my means of expressing it, my means of kind of relating to that person might not be as strong as me relating to the person of myself from 5 minutes ago. You know what I mean? Like that's that Ultron kind of description, like kind of I level up from who I just was, and I use that last human being version of me as the most recent fuel to kind of foster these flames. Like that's the way I want to see it. That's kind of, it's like, it's the same as like anything jiu-jitsu or striking stuff. Like the guy who didn't slip the first jab and now is somebody who's been taught how to slip a jab. So it's like, okay, cool. I've now leveled up. You know, I mean, that's happened. Obviously, it's all in the moment, but you can use what I prefer to do, I think, is to use the most recent example of yourself more consistently to make that. Like, for instance, you can say this about yourself, like, oh, yesterday I had a bad day, but today I'm going to use yesterday's kind of yesterday's lessons to fuel today. But then sometimes when you need that real deep motivation, you can go all the way back and be like, well, as a kid, like this happened to me, or when as a kid, that, like, this is what I found amazing about the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. When he was talking about his dad, this is something I can proper resonate with. I don't know if you've ever had this, right? My dad's a mechanic, right? So he'd be underneath the car, and he'd be like, shout me, Omar, come here. Okay, can you grab me the number 7 spanner? And I was like, okay, cool. I run over to the thing. I'm like, which one? This one? And he'd be like, nope. This one? No. This one? No. Oh, fuck. Like, I want to get this right. I want to get this right so bad, but I just don't know. And he'd have to get himself out of the car and be like, that one. Like, oh shit. Like, and Michael Jordan had the same thing, and his dad would tell him, just go back in the house with your mom. Like, you ain't gonna be nothing. And I remember seeing that, and I thought, yes, that was such a motivation for me when I was younger, which was like, I've got to kind of just be with it enough to kind of show this man in my life, my father, that I get this stuff too, and it motivates me. It motivates me to this day, because it's like I don't know much about cars, but I definitely, like, kind of, I can hang with my dad in a conversation in some ways. That's kind of brought me forward, and then you just use that. You can use that motivation from when you were like super young to, like we said, like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you really look up to your dad in that sense as well. It's like, okay, what I do, I want to make sure he's cool with it as well.
For sure, man. For sure. I think that's rooted, right? Like, you want to like make your parents proud, and like just I don't know, like the small things, based upon like how highly you put your kind of your leaders in a way. Those small things mean a lot, right? So like you don't want to fall in any way. So yeah, it's interesting, man. Super interesting. I definitely, from a young age, had this idea of like that motivates me. I don't know if that's kind of a universe. Did you have that when you were young? That kind of every little thing kind of motivating you?
No, I think I don't know, man. It's weird. It's like I don't really know what motivated me when I was younger. It's just that was just like going through life. I think I call it like when I realized when I was working in tax, and then when I went through the idea of figuring out what I want to do to get out of it, that period I call it my awakening. So I'm like 24 years old, going on 25, and I'm like, I just kind of woke up. It was like, okay, I'm going to take charge of my life now. Like, this is what needs to happen. And it was, so it's almost like, for me, that's, there's two different eras there in that sense as well. As like one where I was kind of like just walking my way through the trodden path already, didn't have to think about anything, wasn't really thinking about anything, even though like, okay, after my awakening, I realized that I didn't make choices that were about me. I never made those choices. I realized that looking back, but at the time it just felt like I was just doing what needed to be done. It just never really felt like there was any motivation behind the choices. It was just like, okay, you're going to go to school, you're going to get your GCSEs, then you're going to get your A levels, and you're going to go to uni. And it was just like, all right. And it was very bland, I guess. So I don't know what the motivation was as a kid. I don't even think that's a good question, actually. It's really making me think. It's like, I don't know if I actually had motivation. For sure, like when I was younger, so probably up until I was about 12 or 13, I guess, you start hitting those teenage years, and definitely like, definitely didn't want to feel like I was going to be upsetting my parents. So like, making sure I'm not disappointing them. But that was, I feel like I was looking at it from this aspect of don't disappoint as opposed to make them proud. That's very different, right? So it was a kind of pressure which meant that I lacked motivation to succeed on any level for myself until I woke up at the age of 24, 25. So yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that question in the context of motivation, because I don't really, that would have been it. And I don't really think I had any motivation for myself until I started getting that anxious feeling, and I started feeling like something's not right. I've never experienced anything like this before. What the hell am I going to do about this? And luckily, I had something imprinted in me, which was look into this, figure it out, and then, who knows what happens from there. But it was very much, instead of it ruling me, I tried to figure out what it was. And then I realized, I came to the conclusion that it was that I'm just not doing what I really want to be doing. I'm not being authentic. Is essentially, authenticity has become a big part of, explicitly has become a big part of my life, especially in the last 6 months, especially the turn of this year. But I would say, since I've made the transition into being involved in the fitness industry, it was, that's me being my authentic self. And I think that's also a big reason why I don't regret anything that's happened in the last 8 years since I've been in the industry, 8.5 years since I've been in the industry, and since the last 10 years that I've made the transition over, working on that transition, is because there's a level of authenticity there, right? And so now I'm a lot more explicit about that. It's like, I just want to live authentically and want to be able to have honest conversations with myself, with other people. And authenticity for me means expressing myself in the most realist sense of myself, which is, okay, if I didn't do this podcast, it would always be in the back of my mind that, what would have happened if I do this? Even if it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it doesn't have to be like crazy successful, how people view a podcast needs to be. It's just something that if I didn't do it, I'd be holding back a piece of myself. And then finally creating my online program, something that's been in the back of my mind for a little while now. But if I didn't do it, it'll be stuck in the back of my mind. And that's not a good place for it to be stuck, because I'm not being my authentic self. I'm holding myself back in a certain way. And the confidence I feel like that comes with putting yourself out there in an authentic way is kind of unparalleled. And there's certainly a vulnerability to it as well, because you're like, oh shit, this is me being me. If it doesn't get accepted, you feel like you want to recoil. But at the same time, it's a powerful position to be in, because you're acting out your best interests, which is only going to help other people out at the same time. And yeah, so so I would say for me, there's that split in who I am from pre-24 to after making that, after 24. And yeah, growth, like you said, that event has been, your accident was like, there was major growth in that period. And for me as well, there was a lot of growing pains for sure, because, it was like being tied to, just being tied to, I guess, a certain way of living or a certain expectation. And then it's like not having all the answers as well. So not knowing stuff about what the hell any of this stuff means going forward. But just knowing that I needed to take the action. And so, yeah, so it was like at that time, that was a really interesting period. Well, I say interesting. I could say that looking back at the time, it was just like, all right, I'm doing this thing. I've got no fucking idea if it's going to work or not. I don't even know what I'm going to do the next day or the day after that. And but yeah, here we are. And I would look at it as yeah, again, really thinking about what you said is a good question, because I feel like the motivation was in the wrong place as a young child, and then it's not the wrong place. It's just the place that it felt like it should have been in. And but then it just meant that I was neglecting what I really wanted. And when you're young, I guess you can like really do that quite easily, because I don't know, you just have this, I don't know, abundance of energy for just being able to do stuff. And even if it's not right for you, you can just do it. And then after a period of time, that just grates on you. And that's what happened to me. So I guess there was no motivation early on. And then, yeah, when I hit that age where I had that quarter life crisis, I call it. and I just went, okay, this is what's going to motivate me. Yeah. This is what I need to do. This is how I need to move forward. So yeah, that's it, man.
I like it, man. I like it.
Yeah. It's like similar to what you said as well. There's a lot to unpack there. We could go into it, but I'm happy to as well, because it's a good thing to do. It's just like, you evaluate your life, you learn a bit by yourself by looking back, and yeah, there is a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to learn from it, because in hindsight, it's something I was talking about with Matt, again, my housemate, and it's one of those things where, like, because me and we put the reps in our field on some level, and in terms of growing our mindset for achieving certain things. And like you said, by no means are we like the finished article, because at the end of the day, there's still plenty of things like, okay, there's certain domains of my life. It's like, okay, I'm performing at this level, and other things is like, I'm down here, but I'm going to take all the frameworks and all the fundamental principles of what I'm doing to be here and apply them to the ones where I'm down here, so that I can get all the bars leveling up, all the bars that I need working for me to have a good life for the future, to level up. So what it can do is, because we put those reps in and because we work on that stuff, it can feel like it's just, for other people, it can feel like it's just easy for us to say, okay, this is what you need to do. But it's like, yeah, it's easy to say, but anything is easy to say, because in the sense that we've figured it out as we've gone along, and we've taken a shit ton of weird turns along the way. And so when we say to you, here's the route that you need to take, that's because we've done all the other routes, and we're making it simple for you. And that doesn't mean if you and then it will also mean, like, you can get from A to B where you need to be a hell of a lot easier, but you will also have your own challenges along the way, right? And that doesn't rule that out. It will still be difficult. So we can say this is simple. We never say it's easy. We always say it's simple because we've done it ourselves. We can look back and we can understand the framework that we applied to help us get to where we are. And also we can corroborate that with other success stories and other things that we know about. Say, if it's in the domain of achieving a goal, then that's what it links in with the neuroscience, and it links in with what other people have done. And we know that that works. And the interesting thing is like, we can look back and be like, oh yeah, we did apply that. We just had no fucking idea that that's what we were doing. And so for other people, it will be like, we're not saying anything's going to be easy. We're saying we know the route. You just need to pull the trigger and make it happen for yourself, and keep driving.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I was saying to her that, like, you almost want to, if you could go back and do something, you almost want to remove the redundancies, remove the things that you kind of go through, and they're a bit, and that redundancy can be, oh, this entire venture didn't add anything to my life, or it could have been that I didn't apply myself enough to this venture to see what it could eventually reach. You know what I mean? So it's like, kind of, as soon as you can look back at your life and remove those redundancies, the faster you can start making progress in the right direction. And at the end of the day, that's when we look at our lives and say, like, oh, I want to achieve X, Y, and Z. I want to give to charity, and I want to build institutions around fitness and health and knowing yourself. That shit can happen much sooner if you're able to just tackle the things that are making you lose right now. Like Jordan Shadow says it in one of his weeks of his podcast. He was like, to win, first you have to stop losing, right? And that makes so much sense. Like, it's such a simple thing, but it's like, you can't win if you're just constantly kind of falling down and not winning, right? So it's like let's stop losing first, like with the choices that we make and the kind of the ways we apply ourselves and the methods that we choose and the people that we follow. And let's, like, look back and realize that in this and this area, I should have applied myself more, or I could have furthered myself if I'd applied myself more. And then just follow that path. You follow that path, and, like, kind of this. I was talking to her yesterday. I was saying the same thing. Like, I want to almost have like I have a vision of myself when I'm, like, old and grey, and being like a teacher somewhere, and being like, I'm not a teacher of a subject. I'm just a guy who's made every mistake under the sun. So, like, come, children, I'll tell you what not to do. Like, that's me. You know what I mean? And it's good. Like, that's I'm totally fine with that, because it comes from the person who's willing to just jump in straight away and be like, oh, okay, I failed quickly, and then you start learning from it straight away. Like, this is how you course correct. This is hopefully you just kind of remember enough of those lessons to help the next person.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
And you know what I find interesting about it as well is, like, I think in a lot of ways you're not going to actually be able to help somebody to stop making the mistake, but you will be able to help them guide their way through it a hell of a lot more efficiently than if they didn't have someone like you around, right? Because
likewise, bro. Yeah.
It's just like, it's what we talk about in that you're going to make mistakes, but mistakes are the surefire way of getting to success, as long as you learn from them. And so there's the thing about you can always learn from other people's experiences, but there's something, you're lacking that visceral element, and you just need to have your own fuck up to be like, oh yeah, I really get it now. and then have that conversation with the old grey Umar and be like, okay, he gets it. He can show me through.
You're right. Have you seen an episode of the movie? Have you seen Star Trek, the movie?
Nah.
Yeah. It's proper sweet, man. Like, I didn't realize that I would enjoy it as much as I did enjoy it. But it's probably people who really watch Star Trek. People are like, what are you talking about? It was terrible. But I don't know. I've never watched Star Trek. I found the film enjoyable. I apologize. Right. And there's a bit in the film where the second film, right? So the spoiler alert, first off, if you don't want to hear about Star Trek, then you can forward this bit.
La 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 la
la. So, like, the Spock of today's generation goes forward and speaks to the Spock of, like, 50 years from now, and he's like,
I'm going to put the spoiler on the screen instead.
Yeah, just batter that shit up, man.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert
exactly.
for Star Trek, second one or whatever. Yeah, he talks to basically the future version of himself, and is like, "How did we win this?" And he's like, "Oh well, it's going to be treacherous and whatever." And it's pretty cool the way he says it, and he has a really sick voice. And yeah, that's kind of the way you kind of look at it. Is like, if you go forward in your life and you can speak to the old grey version of yourself, it would be super sweet. But I think until then, you can just fail your way forward, man. Fail your way forward.
I don't know. See, that's an interesting conundrum. If you had that option to be able to speak to future you know, would you take it? It's like
depends. It depends. I think it depends, because like straight away I'm thinking of like the people that I'm doing it for. Like, do I if I turn left or turn right, do I end up like giving them what they want and making sure that they're cool and dandy and happy and stuff? Then yeah, I kind of want to know, because I want to make sure that's I don't fuck this up. You know what I mean? Like this has got to go right. You know. But yeah, it depends, man. It depends. It's an interesting question. What do you think?
Oh man, I don't know, because obviously instinctively you're like, I get to know the future. Of course, I want to know. But then that would. It's like this whole thing. Oh man,
with too much power comes great responsibility, man.
My brain, yeah, man, my brain is just gonna freaking explode just thinking about all the possibilities that could come from it. Because then it's like, okay, if I do find out, then will it happen that way still? Will I change the way I behave if I didn't want in either direction? If I find out something that I didn't want to happened. Well, will I change what I need to do? And if I find out that it happened the way that it happened, it's like, okay, great. Then how do I still make sure that happens, knowing that information? It's weird, because this is the thing about delving into the unknown, which is like when you're doing your thing, and you know, we talked about it, is like incremental gains. In 1 year's time, we've got 60 podcasts, right? And if you tell me, if I meet the person a year from now saying to me, it's going to become crazy successful, you're going to have thousands and thousands of people listening to it, you'd be like, oh, that's amazing. But then it's like, how did I make that happen? Like, are you going to tell me how I made that happen? I don't know. It's like there's so many layers to it. But then if somebody tells me, if they tell me you get like 10 people listening every week and it just stayed that way every week, and it's like, am I still going to do that with that information? So I don't want the future to skew what I believe to be the right action to be taking right now. You know what I mean? There's lots of different ways that we could look at it. Because at the same time, it's like, for me, we've talked about it as well. You know, the whole purpose of this podcast is like, you know, we want to be honest. We want to talk about fulfilling potential, because we want to make, because we know that the things that we talk about, there's an impact that it has on people. And each week we get somebody saying something like really nice to us about it as well, like people who we know and people who we don't know, which is amazing. And it's just like, we never thought that that's what would happen. And if it's just like one person, that's great. Even if only 10 people listen and there's one person who gets something out of it, that's freaking amazing, because that's what it's about. And so it's like, you know, if I find out about my future self is saying these things to me, is like, well, I don't know, what am I going to learn from it, really? You know, is it in a way? It's there's so many angles.
So many variables, man. So many variables. Well, I thought, like, if say you found out that it all went the right way, and you found out how it all happened, then you're just kind of playing it out. You're just kind of a passenger in your own life. You know, you can't. Then you just be like, oh, why don't I just fuck with this now? Like, why don't I just kind of like go left? I should have gone right. Like, I'm gonna just my car ran out of gas. I'm gonna stay here for a while. Like, oh shit, what did I do? Yeah, you definitely start picking at the stitches and be like, oh, let me see if I can still work it out.
Yeah, that's it. Because because then it's like, okay, then you're going to ask yourself, okay, how did it happen? And then you're going to have a long enough conversation where you be like, okay, at this moment you did this, and at this moment you did this. So then it's like, I've gone forward 50 years, but I've spent 50 years talking about how I'm going to make all this shit happen as well, because you got to go through each moment, and because every moment has something that matters to it, in a sense, right? It's weird. It's just like, that's why it's like a crazy.
That's one for the listeners. What do you think? What do you
Yeah.
think? Would you find out? What do you think? Would it affect shit? Like, yeah, all the Back to the Future theories coming out. Right, here we go.
That's it. Exactly. It's like, will you see your picture fade? Like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah. Oh shit, man. Hot Tub Time Machine. That's the one, man.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
That's the best time travel movie out there, man. For sure.
That's such a joke spot as well. That's great. And how about if you flip it? If like the other way around. So if you could go back to a past version of yourself where you feel like you really need to so like where you feel like you really need to give that past version of yourself a talking to, like what would you say and when would that be?
Wow. Don't know, man. I don't know. I just think because like if it was just like made no difference to today's timeline or whatever, or not that it made no difference, but that it was just like it was just a thing that you could just go back and do and then live your life with that. You probably go back to yourself when I was like primary school and just be like, trust yourself. Like you don't need to follow the crowd. Yeah, I never did follow the crowd. I was always a bit of a weirdo. Like I was always just kind of the kid just kind of on my own little shit. And yeah, I think I would just tell them just keep going. You're doing the right thing. Like just to kind of tell the kid like, yeah, it's cool. Whatever you're doing, keep going. And then yeah, just kind of live with that kind of knowledge. But then again, like you don't know whether you would have lost that message because other things would have happened in your life, and you would have been like, oh, what's this person think here, or what's that person think there? You'd almost need to like intermittently jump back into your own life and be like, it's cool, crack on. But then, to be fair, you can almost probably do that for yourself now. You know what I mean? Because it'll kind of like the way we frame it, like, what would the future version of yourself? Would he thank you for doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah.
In a way, like I'm gonna go have food in a minute. Like I could just smash my face full of like everything under the sun that's not healthy. But the future version of myself probably sitting there and be like, this guy thinks like, what the fuck? What's wrong with it? Why does he hate me so much? You know what I mean?
If you had a picture of your future self, you could just see him changing shape every second. You know? it's like, I'm going to eat this. And like, oh, that's what he looks like now. Oh, I'm going to eat this instead. Oh, he looks pretty good.
I love that. Just like cheese string. Yeah.
Exactly. Because you imagine, oh, I've got this great visual in my head now as well. You're holding the picture of future you, and you're moving the cheese string close to your mouth, and the closer you pull it, the bigger you get in that picture. The further away you take it, the smaller you get, like the more hench you get.
Sliding scale. Yeah, man. That's so legit. But that's true, man. It's like, do I go for this run? Oh, the future version of myself is more of a wimp. It's like, oh, let's go for the run. Let's go for the run. Like I need to like beat that part of myself into submission. So yeah, man. Do I get out of bed? Do I stay in bed? Like yeah. Funny shit, man.
You know what? Actually, because we've like highlighted that explicitly, I think that's actually gonna be pretty helpful to me. Just being like future self, because it sounds weird to say that, but especially because we're always talking about moving forward, like, you know, being better off tomorrow than the previous day. But there's still models that you can use which help you in every sense. That's not one that I've really thought that much about, in the sense that I just know that, okay, in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years time, I just want to be better off than I am right now. Otherwise, that vacuous mediocrity that I describe as my own personal idea of hell is not met. And that makes me, you know, because if I think about it and being in that place, I'm like, ooh, that's horrible. It's like, you know, there's something like inside me which just goes, if you're being mediocre in your own definition of it, you're just dead inside. Basically, it's not a good feeling. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to be learning. I want to be physically healthy and active, and et cetera, and feel like I'm doing something in that front, which means that, yeah, future me will thank me for that. But then I don't really think of future me like that. I've never really envisioned it. So I could, yeah, I think that'd be pretty powerful, man. I think just looking at it and being like, if I just decide to stay in bed, future me is not going to thank me for this. And there's that, that's cool. That's interesting. That's again, another thing that's just that's been helpful is like, all right, if I stay in bed, future me is going to be thanking me for this. There'll be days where you actually say, yeah, because you just realize you're fucking spent, and if you try and push through the day, then you're going to burn yourself out. So no, actually, you need to chill. Or can eat that cheese string because I got a good handle on my behaviors, you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but I think that's a helpful frame. Is like if I look at myself tomorrow, or if 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, whatever the time frame is like, by taking that action, will I still be? Will future me thank me for it?
Yeah, man.
Will future me thank me for it? Yeah.
You just make like now more important, right? You kind of tie it to like, oh, this decision right now, it does mean something. It just ties back into what you were talking earlier about, like having purpose and having like all those things driving your decisions right now, and if they're at the forefront of your mind, and how like you're seen by your peers, by your family, by your friends, whatever, or in time from now, does future you thank you for studying a bit harder, or like taking your time in a conversation to really understand somebody? Yeah, chances are probably does. So yeah, man, no, that 100% feeds into it.
I like that, man. That was good. That was helpful.
yeah. Interesting. We got to build this. We got to build this like Harry Potter style. The paintings in Harry Potter that move. Like we need to build that in relation to you, like having a few things. Like, did you sleep an extra in bed? You just see like your future self just like slovenly, like laid out, like driving to KFC, just like
oh man, yeah, exactly, yeah, changing. Like how helpful would that be if like it's somewhere in the future, you know, you get like they're like you can play music that changes based on the mood it picks up on that you were in. I don't know. I don't even know if that's a thing or if that was just a sci-fi thing. But then like, you walk into a room and you just look at a picture of your future self. You're like, and then it just changes based on all right, I'm gonna do this. And then you might just paralyze yourself. You might just stand there staring at the picture, change and not actually do anything at all.
It's true. It's like you see these things on like Instagram, right? Where they're like the aging one. It's like, of course you're gonna look old. Like you're old, right? Like what the fuck else are you gonna look like? You're gonna look like Pamela Anderson, right? Like it's not gonna happen. You're gonna be old, right? But it's like, how does the choices affect me, right? Like you like, am I now like, you can have it like a stat system, like heart, emotion, like knowledge or whatever, or like ability to learn, like all these different fucking shit, and just see how they kind of level up and change, or how the number minority report your entire life, and just see how it kind of how it plays out, man. Yeah,
that's funny. You said it's not gonna look like Pamela Anderson. Like, what if I want to look like Pamela Anderson?
Gee, if you want to look like Pamela Anderson, be my guest. That's it's gonna be really, really weird wrestling with you though afterwards. Just like, oh, Grinda. Oh,
got something in the way. Got a couple things in the way.
You're like, oh, this is awkward.
Yeah. It's like, I used to know you.
I know. God. How about you just walking into wrestling, just be like, this is not what I envisioned. Returning to wrestling to be like, Grinda, do we need to have a talk about something? No?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah. What do we need to have a talk about? Everything's the same as it was, except for one thing.
Oh man, it's like an episode of Simpsons where Marge gets a boob job, and just like everyone just treats her different. You're just like, super strange, super strange.
It's true. It happens, man. It's true. I've been because I've been reading about. This is why I like it. I mean, I'm just loving the neuroscience stuff because I feel like it's just at the very least, I think it's integral to understand why we are the way we are, or like rather how we are the way we are. There's a bunch of things that we just don't really know, like, and that's why the conversation around morality came up with my flatmate. And so, like, you know, how moral you are is, for example, is going to depend on so many different things. There's like cultural variance to it. There's situational, all that kind of stuff. How altruistic you are as well is just going to depend on, like, you know, attractiveness, basically. So that whole thing is it's not even false. It's one of the variables that affects, you know, whether you're generous to somebody or not, whether you think that they're attractive or not, basically, is a part of it. So yeah, man, Simpsons always knows. Somehow they always know something.
Too right.
It's like, they knew Donald Trump would be president.
Yeah.
All that
Holy
crap.
shit, man. It's crazy. It's Crazy. Simpsons is actually that alien overlord that we kind of like think is out there somewhere. It's just they just came in and made Simpsons. That's it. That was their input.
Yeah, they figured that they bestowed the Simpsons upon us to help us plan our lives, and really we're like, oh, look at this funny cartoon. Like, no, there's a lot more to this.
God, if we've just figured it out, then I want major props for like 10, 50 historians listening back to this podcast. But like, these boys knew.
Yeah,
Crazy
exactly.
shit, man. Crazy shit.
That's right, man. Right, we got. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
No. Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna shift off to you, but you got there, Cole.
Oh, I was gonna say we got a question that came through from listeners, right? And we do a little answering listener question segment.
Let's do it.
So we appreciate the questions that come in. This is good food for thought, and we feel like there's it's very valuable for us because we get to think about certain things in a certain way, and make sure that we're saying the right thing as well. And we hope, like, obviously there's a lot of benefit for people to get out of it as well.
It's kind of our way of like, do you know how we talked earlier about like having good conversations? It's kind of our way of like having that conversation with you guys, right? So it's fun. Like I'm sure of you like ringing me up and being like, hey, what's going on? This is that, right? This is that kind of little segment. I really enjoy this.
Yeah, wicked, man. All right, I'll get you to start off answering the question then. So thank you to Raminda for busting out the question. It's my client, and she did say, I was like, I'm always interested in hearing questions. And she was like, I got like 1 million. Like, I was like, that is amazing. She goes, if it's too many, just let me. Like, no, there's no such thing as too many. Just throw them out so we'll do what we can with them.
Yeah.
And so this one was, the question was, I'm not a fan of routine and I love living a life of variety. But of course, this isn't always feasible. So my question to you guys, what would you suggest is the best way to adjust a mindset to deal with routine?
Over to you, question.
Big Brown.
That's a really good question, man. Not always a fan of routine. Read the next bit again, please, bro.
So my question to you guys would be, what would you suggest is the best way to adjust a mindset to deal with routine?
Yeah, I think it's, we talked about it earlier in the podcast today, tying that routine to mean something. I think if left to our own devices, our human being, the actual being that we are, would just be cool with just existing its way through life, right? But the fact that we want to achieve things, we have things that we want to look back on our life and say, yeah, I did those things. Anybody that you listen to, I was listening to a podcast with Mark Cuban this morning. He's a billion, nearly trillionaire, like somebody who just kind of has his life, obviously that part of his life, sorted. And I think he's one of the things he was talking about was just like sticking to the routine, sticking to studying every day, sticking to making sure that he's looking up his market and his field, and it just ties it to his goal. His goal was to be wildly rich and kind of own a football team and own a hockey team and a basketball team and stuff, and he's got there. And I think it's back to that why, isn't it? It's back to that why about why are you doing what you're doing? Is that why bigger than your current state of I want to stay here and be cool where I am? And if it is, then you've almost got to expand into that part of your life now. You've got to realize that where you are right now isn't fulfilling you in that one way. But when if you were to give up a bit of your freedoms and trade them as a commodity for more discipline, that discipline can then be traded for another commodity, which is achieving your goals. So it's like kind of I have all this time and this freedom. So I'll give you this, you give me some discipline. Then what do I do with this? So you use it to go and achieve what you want. Oh, okay, sick. Like I'll be back in 2 years, and I'll be the shit, right? Yeah, it makes sense, right? Like kind of that's anybody that kind of I look up to right now, yourself. You built this online portal. That shit takes time, right? That shit is like. It's so you said like podcast and portal, like that's the life you've lived, and it's clearly a lot of discipline that goes that way. And like anybody else, they will have spent their time just beating on their craft. So I think yeah. What do you think to that, man?
I love the way you said that, like trading it like it's a commodity. That's That's beautiful. I really like that. I think that helps you understand. Yeah, it's transactional. You know, is like you've got this freedom, you got this time or whatever it is, but you want to transact that for discipline. And as like Jocko Willink says, you know, discipline equals freedom. And I've certainly felt that every time I've been disciplined, I feel free in that, even in that microscopic moment itself, because I'm like, oh, I'm doing something that I feel is valuable, and that makes me feel free mentally, emotionally. I feel good about all that. So yeah, you're trading it in for something which is going to predispose you to achieving new heights, right? So but yeah, what I find interesting, like with the question is like not found a routine, love living a life of variety. What people tend to think is if you have a routine, that doesn't mean that means that you're stuck in something which is not entertaining, that is not fun. That's the misconception. There's a couple of misconceptions about routine. One of them is that, you know, you don't necessarily have to have it, especially when people identify themselves as more on the level of being, like, say, more creatives. And then the other thing is that routine is what makes you, it just sucks the fun out of life. And I feel like there are two misconceptions, because number one, our biology depends on routine. So we actually live by the light of the day. So there's literally sensors in our eyes that are picking up the morning light and the evening light to tell the rest of the body, to tell all the clocks in the body, clock cells in the body, that you need to align yourself with the light hours of the day. So your body intrinsically requires routine, right? And your mind intrinsically requires routine, because when you're not getting that routine and having proper exposure to light, you actually set off circuits in your brain which make you feel more depressed, make you feel more anxious, and make you feel more stressed. So this is a physical, innate system that's built into us, which requires routine. So that's what we are. We are creatures of routine as well. Then the other thing about it being something where it may not allow you to live a life of variety is then the question is like, you know, what are you doing to apply a routine to your life? Are you making it so that you're actually kind of sucking the fun out of life by feeling like you can't have variety and can't have enjoyment from it? Or are you actually setting it up so that the routine that you have is actually allowing you to have fun with that routine as well as outside of that? And so a couple of things that come to mind for me is okay, so the question being, what would you suggest is the best way to adjust a mindset to deal with routine? 100% is what Umar said, is having your why and always going back to that, because you have a routine. I'm guessing because you want to make the most out of you have a routine to make the most out of your day, and by trying to make the most out of your day, that means you're trying to live to your own kind of ideal. So you want to attach a meaning to the idea of having the routine, like why are you doing that? And then it's rewarding yourself for getting yourself into a good routine, however that's going to be, like, you know, starting off small. So is it that simple thing of getting up and making my bed in the morning is something that I usually leave till later on, and I should do that now? And if you do that, it's like, okay, great. That's make it so that you reward that part of the routine, and then you feel good about it. So then you feel good about doing routine, you know? So there's like those microscopic things. You have to be able to have an internal reward mechanism set up for everything that you do that is designed to get you to a certain outcome. Otherwise, it just makes it a hell of a lot more difficult that you'll achieve that outcome. So in this case, having a routine helps you achieve an outcome. And if having a routine is difficult, then you want to have an internalized reward process around creating a routine. So then you do that, and then all those little things add up, and then you start to feel good about the routine. And then it's also like basically then that comes down to the structure of it as well, which is if you feel like it is sucking the life out of life out of your day, then you want to reorganize that routine. You want to be like, okay, what am I doing? The first of all, the why, and then how you're doing it is important. And you want to look at how you're doing that. Are you just basically in a draconian kind of way putting measures on yourself, like this is the routine I must follow? By 9 a.m. I must have done this, by 10 a.m. I must have done this, by 11 o'clock, etc., etc., etc. And then because it feels rigid, that means it feels like it's not fun and there's no variety. So actually what you want to be doing is, in terms of routine, is just setting yourself up so that you can have the day you want, is basically it, is setting yourself up so that in that routine, if you achieve those things, those would be good. And within that, you give yourself the chance to express some variety as well. So it's not something that's like rigid and draconian and you have to do it. It's something to do with how you apply it, the why behind it, and yeah, so that you can make it fun for yourself, for sure. And that will help you adapt your mindset. Because from a personal level, is like, I used to be somebody who was like, I just didn't have a routine in the explicitly structured sense, and that was realized by actually introducing routine and realizing the kind of ideal day that I'd like to have, that made me actually happier. I'm having a much more fulfilling day because I've got routine baked in. You know, I'm doing the things which help me express myself as best as possible, and yeah. So I realized from personal experience that by putting in a routine, it made a big difference to how I live my day and how good I feel about it. And it doesn't take anything away from my day.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Totally agree. I think it's like kind of sometimes vilifying routine and not seeing the benefits of it, and maybe being like, back to that first conversation we had today, which was like seeing the benefit in kind of going slower and trying to see the lesson that your life is trying to teach you, because on some level asking a question about routine might mean that you know that it's something that you don't quite conquer. So yeah, you're asking the questions, first step in you knowing that it's something that it's a faculty that you want to achieve, and then from there, like slowly integrating it, hopefully with the things we've said, and then just like you said, celebrating the wins along the way and hailing kind of routine for that win.
Absolutely, man. It's a good little sum up. Yeah, so that's hopefully that helps answer the question. I think it's a very good question, because yeah, a lot of the time we just create a routine which actually doesn't serve us very well. You know, like we block ourselves in, we make it feel like it's a fixed thing, and but it's like, no, there's like there's a way of applying it so that you can actually get the most out of it, and it doesn't have to suck the fun out of life.
Too right.
If anything, it will enhance life as well. If you've got a proper routine, for example, around sleep, if you get a proper routine around eating and schedule your training in properly, all that kind of stuff, you're just winning. You know, you require structure to win. Because I mean, if we look at it from like the extreme ends, if we're too far down the end of not having any routine or not having any structure, then you never get anything done. Basically, you never get anything of value done, because you could, like, if you're somebody who's like, say, fairly creative, you can be so creative that you come up with like a million ideas, but then if you don't have any structure, you're never going to get those ideas off the ground, right? So, and then there's obviously they go too far the other way, where if you are extremely structured, you might get, you know, people who are extremely structured probably get a lot of juice from doing that, but then, you know, most people on average ain't gonna experience that. They're just gonna feel like they're living life in a prison. So it clearly shows that, especially if you're too far down the other end where you don't have any routine or any structure baked in, you just don't get as much done. You don't get anything done that you need to get done. So that shows the value of having routine by looking at it from that extreme end. So is you want to get it in there so that you can make the most out of stuff.
Yeah, man, totally agree. Totally agree. Do we have any more questions today? Do we have? I know we had that one from Bilal last week, the one about force production. But I was going to say that I want another week to go away and research that, because, to be honest, I don't know if you want to link it to our guest next week, because that's kind of a link off. So to Bilal, I'm going to go away and research that question a bit more and come back with more comprehensive answer, because it's a great question.
Exactly. Yeah, the question was basically around for any other trainers listening, but just people in general. It was the force requirement of isometrics versus concentric action. So isometric action is just basically fixed range of motion. There is no range of motion, just fixed action, and you're squeezing a muscle, say. And concentric action is when a muscle is shortening. So if you think of, stretching is lengthening a muscle. If I squeeze my bicep, if I curl my fist to my shoulder, that's a squeeze of the bicep, that's a concentric action. And then isometric is just basically holding a fixed angle and then putting force through that. And so his question was basically, what is the requirement for isometric contraction greater than concentric contraction? And we've got some initial thoughts on that, but we just wanted to make sure what the research was saying on that as well. And so tying into next week, we have another guest on the podcast. It's going to be another great conversation with another powerful, almighty woman, and who goes by the name of Grace Stilgo. So Grace is an actuary by day and a power lifter by night. And that is highly impressive, because she has managed to qualify for the World Championships of Powerlifting. And for somebody who's been doing it seriously for only 3 years, and it's huge. It's wild. So it's like, all right, this is an interesting person we have in front of us. Let's find out what you've been doing to get to that stage, and who's somebody who would comes across as a very ordinary person, but is doing some extraordinary things. And there's a lot for us to learn from who she is and what she does. And I think we're going to have a really fascinating conversation. I've already spoken to her a little bit about being on the podcast. Obviously, she knows that she's going to be here. but what I mean is like, she started saying some things. I was like, oh, this is going to be some good stuff for the podcast. So tune in next week, people. It's going to be an epic episode.
Too right. That's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that for sure. Yeah,
big time. Wicked, man.
Nice.
Great chat today, man.
That was really good. Really enjoyed that, man. Yeah. Really enjoyed it. It was weird without seeing Juju come live. Kind of got used to seeing 3 people in the podcast. It was just like getting used to just being G.
Exactly. It's like, man, how are we going to have a conversation ever again? And it's like, oh, yeah, we did it. It's fine. We're okay. It was sick. I got a message from Jude earlier today, and she's like, everybody's just calling me Juju now.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's it. She's like, no one. It was just something that she calls me GB and I call her Juju, and she was like, that's like, everybody's calling me Juju Kablam now. It's like no one without fail, without exception. I was like, that is so sick. That's brilliant.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I love
that. We are micro influencers.
Yeah. That's perfect, man. It's wicked. That could have started with Jude as well. That's the best start to it, man.
Exactly. I'm gonna have to ask Grace as well, actually, if she's got some wicked ass nickname that we can use.
Yeah.
And create a story behind that.
Too right.
All right, brother. Good stuff. Thank you for tuning in, people. Reach out to us on Instagram at Evolve Achieve Thrive, or you can email us at evolveachievethrive@gmail.com and tell us what you're thinking. If you are enjoying the podcast, just please leave a rating or leave a review, subscribe, tell your friends about it. We've got a lot more good content coming up, and we'd love for you to be part of that journey. Peace.
Yeah, that was brilliant.